Hello, this is the Notability Workshop video. You can find this outline by going to the Google Classroom and joining my professional development classroom at F1C4XG, and that's where you can find this outline. I'm going to start real fast by showing you how I might share this with my students in Google Classroom. Now, I most often leave them things as notes because if I leave them as PDFs, then the students will be able to use them on their iPads to edit using the PDF editor. But I want them to stay organized, so I usually give them things as notes, and then they can only open them in Notability. So you saw I clicked on other apps, and then I've gone to the classroom. Now I'm sharing this with you as teachers. So I'm not going to be sharing it to one of my classes, but I will show you what that looks like in a second. So I'm going to select the class. I guess I could make this an assignment. And I can do all this fun stuff by giving it a title. Could give directions, but I don't need to. Actually, let's do this to make it more specific, and send. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about today is the settings, all right, that are available in Notability. Now, I have a lot of notes and subjects and things like that, and we'll get to those in a second. All right, but the settings you can access by clicking on the little gear. All right, there's an auto backup setting. I highly recommend that you do this. This will save all of your notes as PDFs or whichever format you choose. I like to do PDF because it's universal. All right, to a folder called Notability. That's the destination. And then within that Notability folder, it'll create a folder for every subject that you create in the Notability application. So these, reading notebook, writing notebook, outsiders, DBQ, these are all subjects that I've created. I definitely recommend you do this. I definitely recommend that you ask your students to do this because even if they're not working on iPads, they can still access all of the documents that they've gotten from you as resources or notes or whatever it is as PDFs, but any work that they do in Notability, if they're using it as like a digital notebook, they can also access all of the things that they create as PDFs as they move forward, and then they would have the ability to keep that folder by transferring that folder between Google accounts forever, so they can essentially keep their work forever, which is really cool. You can have other accounts, so if you wanted to have a Dropbox or if you have a OneDrive or whatever it is, and this is where you would, in Manage Accounts, this is where you would log in and out of those. It can also connect to your iCloud if you are a Apple user. Predominantly, you can just have the iCloud backup going on, and that might be sufficient for your needs, but I'm more of a Google person, so that's why I also have it go to my Google Drive. So I actually have both, which is good. You can also change the themes. So you might notice that your background is white, whereas mine is dark. All right. They also have themes that you could pay for depending on seasons and or colors, but that's kind of it's kind of crazy. I would like a fall theme. I just go with the dark one because it's less strain on the eyes. If you're a math teacher or you just like fancy backgrounds, you can go to the document settings and you can pick like what you would like your default notes to be called, and you can change that. So if you don't want them to be called note, you can have it automatically include the date and the time that notes are created. This might be good for your students, especially so that they are keeping track of when they completed work and things like that, just like in a regular notebook. And then you also have different types of paper. So graph paper or whatever it is, you can have it so that every time you open a note, that's the style of paper it is, instead of it just being like a white, like plain piece of paper, essentially digital paper. fonts and colors, you can also set the defaults for that so that you aren't constantly playing around with the settings. I always have it to check spelling, and I also always have it to tap anywhere, so I can literally just tap anywhere in the document and start typing, which is an awesome feature. I also recommend that you have your students turn these settings on. You can also have them like pick their favorite font and their favorite paper background. Just know that when they submit work, it will be on that background and in that color font, so they might want to choose something that's like school appropriate. Like, you might not want them using like orange font on a purple background, because it could get a little ridiculous and might be difficult for you to read, so you can play around with that. They also have these handwriting settings, so if you're going to use, if you are more of like, I don't want to type, I want to be able to just use my stylus or my, if you have the Apple Pen, to handwrite notes, it's totally acceptable and actually works pretty well. You'll see that in a second. There's also a timer, so like if you don't want your iPad to turn off while you're using Notability in like a presentation form, like I will project my Notability so that the kids can kind of mirror what I'm doing in their own notebook, just similar to if you were projecting like a presentation or a doc or something like that. So if you don't want your iPad to turn off while you're in Notability, that's also dangerous, because if you leave your Notability open and walk away from your iPad's going to stay on. It could drain your battery, so be careful with that. You do have the ability for text to speech, and you can have that go faster or slower. And we have the ability to capture they're images, but they're of websites, so you could like find a website that maybe you want your students to go to, but you want to give them a picture of what it looks like so that you know that they're going to the right place. And we'll talk more about web clips later, but you could have it so that the only way that they can the only way that you can do that is by setting a password, but I don't know why you'd want to do that, because we don't share our iPads with the students. So those are the settings. So again, I definitely encourage you to play around with that. If you ever have any questions, if you click on the little question mark at the bottom, you get the Notability user guide. Definitely helps if you have any additional questions. You can click on any of these topics. Again, the version that you're using of Notability, and then the ability to throw things out the little trash can. If we come up here to the top, all right, we have an edit feature. So once you have notes and things like that, this might be how you move them around. You can also click on the settings button so that you can change the color. You could password protect a specific note or a subject if you don't want anybody to be able to. So like here, this is like a personal one. So maybe that I would use a password so that no one could go in there. And you can also change the names of things from here, which is nice. So if you decide like, no, that's not what that subject should be called, you can change that really easily. Again, you can move things by grabbing onto these three dots, or three lines, as I should say. And you can also, I'm trying to find one that has a lot in it, which is my language arts one. You can move the subjects between the dividers. So what are subjects and dividers? The little plus sign is going to help you create a subject. All right, in the outline, I talk about the difference between subjects and dividers. So subjects hold notes. So within a subject, you'll have multiple notes, and dividers group subjects. So if you look here, the black is like, for here, it's language arts. Let me close these so you can see it better. So language arts, if you see that, I have seven subjects in my language arts divider, but within these subjects, you can see like in my reading notebook, I have 16 notes. So over here on the right, we can see all of these, all of these notes. All right. And again, if I decide that something needs to be moved, I can click on the edit button, I can grab it, and I can move it wherever I want to. All right. So it makes it kind of easy to move things around. A lot easier if you're using like a more traditional paper-based notebook. You know, we always make like, oh, I wrote these in the wrong section, right? Or I feel like I want to like rip all of the pages out. And this is when I started going to binders with my students, because it was easier for them to move things around. this is even easier than a binder, which is kind of crazy and less bulky, right? Who wants a 3-inch binder that they have to carry around with them every day? But so subjects and dividers, I definitely recommend that you start off with a really easy system, and then as you get used to using Notability, you can make your system more complex. So like my system is starting to get more complex, whereas for language arts for a long time all I had was vocabulary, writing, and reading, and now I'm starting to expand into more specific subjects. So you can play around with that. The little box with the up arrow, this is your sharing. Ignore the bells. Those are my cats. They decide to play around every time I'm recording something without fail. So yeah, the sharing button. Now you can share from out here, right? You can also go into a specific note and share that specific note as well. It functions the same way. You would just, if you were out here in like the, what I like to call the like index area, or like table of contents, you would have to click on, but here you can select multiple notes. If you were in the note, you would only be able to share that note. So again, it depends on what you need. All right. If you connect your Google Drive, so if we come over here to the upper right hand corner, if you do decide to connect to your drive, you can click on this box with the down arrow, and this is where you can actually access and this will happen to see the little notice. If you just do it again, it usually works. Depending on your Wi-Fi and how much you have in your Google Drive, this might take a little longer than you want it to load. But here now, I'm in my Google Drive, and I can access every single folder that I have in my Google Drive. Here's my Notability folder, so you can get an idea of what that looks like. Down here at the bottom, I can select which subject I want what I'm downloading to go into. So if I click on Reading Notebook, I can change this, and you see how it's changed to Writing Notebook. Here you can see how these folders all match up with my subjects from Notability. All right. But just to show you, if I wanted to, share an anchor chart that I made with my students, again, it'll say that it's forbidden. Just click off of it. You saw, click back onto it. I have the ability to create a new note or add this note to an existing note. So if I already gave my students a just like that notes and we made the anchor chart together, I could, it was personify it. It's fine. It's really easy to erase things. And then when I open it, now I can scroll down the bottom, see our anchor chart will then be added. So from here up were the notes I gave the students. And now we've made this together. Now, obviously that doesn't belong there. So if I go up to the top, I can delete that page and it'll only, so I clicked on this page icon here. I'll do it a couple of times so you can see. And from here, I can actually move the pages around as well. Ton of features. So while I'm in this note, I can show you the note features. So at the top here, you have the T, the pencil, the highlighter, the eraser, the scissors, which is actually a really cool tool. It'll actually cut a section out that you can copy, and then it turns it into an image, and you can actually paste that anywhere. So your students could take a piece of notes or like an anchor chart, for example, and they could move it around so that they have it on the page with them at all times. So that's a pretty cool feature. And then you just have the hand. You also have the ability to record what you're saying. So if you had a lot of students who were out for whatever reason, you could record your lecture and then distribute that version. What you're saying. So if you had a lot of students who were out for whatever reason, and you could then, delete any recordings. You can make multiple recordings on the same note. So if you had like the lecture and discussion for block 1, and then like for block 2, it was just more of you just like explaining, and maybe it's like an honors class or something, they do more independent work, so just the directions even of what to do on that assignment, it really does help when they hear your voice. You have the ability to add photos. The GIFs thing has been disabled for us in the middle school. I'm not sure what that's like at the high school. Different shapes. This is the web clips feature, so you could